In the past, I often used the phrase "mañana is soon enough" in relation to regulatory and sustainability developments across Latin America. In those years, potential new regulations floated above the continent. Currently, it looks like the carnival of chemical control legislation is marching in, when new regulations are thrown at industry across Latin America. One of the most notable developments is Brazil REACH, and I'm happy to discuss these developments with our two carnival queens, Thaianne Resende of the Brazilian Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and Alejandra Acosta from the Latin America Regulatory Cooperation Forum. Thaianne, Brazil REACH is a significant milestone for protecting human health and the environment in Brazil. Can you explain the key components and also explain how it varies from EU REACH?
Okay, thanks for that question. We are really happy for this, our REACH, our Brazil REACH, but it's not look like a EU REACH. It's most like a Canada REACH law. It's a new law last year, the 5022, the law. And it's not so strict registration like EU. We will focus first in the inventory and prioritization, and after the risk evaluation of the chemicals and then substance. But I think it's more like Canada because we don't have the agency like EU, and we will work in the Ministry of Environment, the Health, and the industry together to do all these legislation works.
Okay, and can you share any news on the implementing regulation that is due by mid-May? Do you expect that you're able to meet that deadline?
Yes, we are doing our best. We create a working group under the CONASC, our commission, that we re-stabilized the CONASC last year as well. The CONASC is the National Commission of Chemical Safety, and we create this working group to do the best regulation that we can do. And it was like 30 associations helping us. We have the Health Ministry, we have the Agency of the Health, we have the industry, the Ministry of Industry, and we have many associations, the industry associations, we have NGOs, we have the academy, we have NGOs about the animals, we have the health minister, we have the agency of the health, we have our agency for the environment, the IBAMA, and the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, it's coordinating this, and we are doing our best in these last months, and we hope we can do this until May. And for this, we create subgroups under this working group, one for testing animals, one for confidentially, and another for the system. So we will, after this, put all together and do the best. But if it didn't finish it until May, it's not the worst thing, because we want to do the best regulation we can. So it was May, June, we don't care much with the time.
Okay,
but,
either May or June, it's soon enough.
Yes.
Obrigado. Yes. Alejandra, the Latin America Regulatory Cooperation Forum encourages local authorities to establish regulatory cooperation. What is your view on Brazil REACH in the global and Latin American context?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. And I must say that, of course, Brazil legislation was extremely, very much welcomed in the region. We were expecting it. Back in 2017, more or less, when LARC was established, one of the main reasons for its establishment was actually that this legislation was being debated. So back then, the industry identified that there was a lack of technical knowledge to address these discussions, that there were people in the different companies and associations that may have some knowledge on REACH-alike legislations because they export their chemicals, but it was not here in Latin America. So that triggered the need of establishing such a forum in which the aim, as you said, is of course to promote governments to put the legislations on, but also to help countries to achieve the best and most factible or feasible legislation. And I think that right now for ABIQIM, which is the Brazilian association, the challenge is very big, of course, because it's difficult to establish these type of regulations, but LARC intends to support that and to provide the knowledge that we have as a network, the experts that we have that have done this in many countries in the region so far, to actually help the country achieve its best. So we are very happy and enthusiastic, a little bit nervous, but very welcoming of this new regulation, a very needed one.
Wonderful. Brazil REACH requires registration with the National Inventory of Chemical Substances, and companies must provide information on substance identification, annual production and import volumes, and GHS hazard classification. Foreign manufacturers may appoint a local representative. How will this be organized by industry and processed by the authorities?
Well, the industry will have 3 years to do the registration of their chemicals, to fill the system, and we don't want to invent the wheels. The industry and the representatives, locals, they have this agreement, so we just have to show us this agreement, and so we can talk with them. So the local representative will fill the system. It will be who we will talk, like the government, but the industry, the important industry, need to have this person in Brazil. But it's normal. It's nothing new for them.
Okay, and Alejandra, how will this be organized by industry?
Well, I see it as one of the challenges that we are currently facing with the legislation, because, of course, Brazil is, I would say, well, Brazil is the most important chemical industry in the region, so there is a lot of local industry, but also because of those volumes, they have a lot of imports of chemicals. So the challenge that we have, and I think it was interestingly solved, is that this figure of having a foreign representative allows a foreign manufacturer to appoint a company of their trust, a person of their trust, to manage their information, which is confidential in many cases. The thing, or the challenge right now, I think it is to understand what will be the responsibility of that foreign manufacturer. Who will be at the end responsible for the information being provided to the government? Because there are a lot of figures around the world, and it is a big question. If that foreign manufacturer is to have the responsibility on the information, is that something that you will find at Brazil, somebody responsible enough to have the responsibility again on the information that they are not owning but receiving from a foreign manufacturer? So I think that is at least as I see it, the last missing point to understand, to see how this finalizes. But if that is closed or is finalized in a good way, I think that it is an excellent opportunity for companies to be confident of the system, knowing that their information is not shared with competitors, not available to others, and it's kept confidential as it should. And it is also creating the opportunity for the Brazilian companies and associations and consultants to have an important role within as well this regulation. So I think it's almost there.
And a follow-up question on my end. Can it be filled out in English, or does it have to?
It's in Portuguese, need to be in Portuguese. But like Alejandra said, the law that doesn't regulation everything. That's why we need the decree, the regulation. And that's in the decree, we will have all this answered. And maybe it's not just in the decree. Maybe we will need more under legislation, like guidance and all this to help us. But just in Portuguese, but maybe any another student research can be another language. But when we are talking about our inspections, enforcement, they need to the system in Portuguese.
Okay.
That's.
No, but because I was wondering, the majority will speak Spanish or English for the real foreign manufacturers and stuff, but...
they will have to adapt.
Yes.
They have to adapt.
Yes.
Perfect. Hey, Alejandra, what are some of the experiences you see from an industry perspective as companies register chemicals, not in Brazil, but in the new systems in Chile and Colombia? Are there any lessons learned there by industry or by government so far in that process?
So many. I cannot list them all. So many. This process, I think, it is worth noticing that this is very new in the Latin American region. And this is triggered because countries want to exceed the OECD, so it's not even that the countries themselves are saying, okay, we need this, we have to advance on this. We have a foreign reason that is pushing our countries to put these regulations on. So you find a lot of challenges because the teams are not ready, the resources are not ready. So what we end up seeing is a lot of copying and adapting a little bit the regulations to the local circumstances. But of course, as you have no experience, sometimes you are drafting laws, decrees, or regulations without knowing what will happen. And then you find out that you are actually implementing and you need to adapt things. Mm-hmm. So one of the good lessons that we learn, first it's as LARC, this possibility of this having a place where to discuss all these things and think, like brainstorm of possible way outs and these difficulties that we encounter was really useful and recognized by authorities as well as a place in which they were able to look at those things that would become a problem before they are a problem and regulate accordingly. Also, something very good was the Colombian case that they did this approach in which they have guidance documents. So they don't have all the details in their decree. They are doing it as they move forward, as they see the needs. They are putting forward like third or fourth level regulations that establish all the details that they can change easily because they needed that. And I would say that also a very big learning was the need for consistency in the region. If we compare the different instruments that are in place, Colombia, Chile, Peru, now Brazil, they have similarities, but also they have some different things that make things so challenging for the implementation. And I can cite, for example, the case of Colombia. They are asking the producers or the importers to provide information on the uses. And they have a list of uses of thousands of different type of uses. And that's so challenging for a company to complete, because it's not even that you can complete that and then apply it to Chile, which has a different list of uses. So I think that is also a lesson learned, the opportunity for coordination and consistency. Basically considering that at the end, the information needed by the authorities is exactly the same. Okay. And I think that is the thing that we have learned and we are trying to widespread. You need all the same information, so why don't you start asking for the same things, Mm-hmm. And one last thing, sorry for the long reply, is the system. The IT system is the key of everything. Yes. And they have seen this challenge in Colombia, in Chile. They are facing a lot of troubles because they didn't design them capable of adaptations, capable of changes. In Chile, for example, they had to directly take it offline. Now they have submissions through mails because the system is not working. So that, I would say, is a huge problem. That needs a lot of investment of resources and brains dedicated to properly design that IT system that will have to survive over the years.
Okay, that's part of the process at governments also. I already said the carnival of chemical control regulations is marching in. What are for companies the main challenges they face when complying with the chemical regulations in Latin America?
Well, these different requirements, I think that is one of the most challenging aspects. because these companies, they don't have this information. So the approach is per substance, and this is a new thing we have in the region. Usually the approach was given per product. So now having an approach per substance makes that very difficult, especially for importers, that they actually don't know what's there in the mixture that they are importing. So the main challenge is to get that information. From whom? From your supplier. But your supplier has to give it. And then we start with all the confidentiality issues, the language issues, the availability issues. So first big challenge, how to get your information. The second big challenge is how to actually put it in, make it available to the government. And now it comes the issue of the systems. They faced so much difficulties. They invested, there is an estimation done by one of the companies that they invested, the amount of hours they invested to put everything together in an Excel file, to being able of putting that into the system, it was hundreds and hundreds of hours. So resources, because of course some of these countries are not that big economies for a huge company. And for them, this is difficult. Imagine for the SMEs. We haven't even reached there. How are going to small and medium companies, how they are going to comply with these type of requirements? That's still a question we are to see the response. But I would say that those are the main difficulties, the lack of coherence among the regulations, the lack of systems that are thought for compliance, and the confidentiality and responsibility aspects.
Okay, thank you. It stresses again the importance of regulatory cooperation across Latin America. There are many regulatory developments in Latin America. Can you give a short update on the key developments in Latin American countries like Colombia, Chile, Peru?
Absolutely. Okay, so first we had Colombia. That was the beginner. Everybody thought it was going to be Brazil, but it ended up being Colombia. So they had this decree on industrial chemical management, and within that decree, they already are in the process of implementing their registry/inventory. People are already putting together the information there, and now they are developing the regulation on prioritization, which is the next step. How they are going to decide which are the chemicals to be assessed. On the other hand, we have Chile. Chile also has a decree. In that decree, it's a little bit wider because it also covers GHS. So we have GHS and the kickoff of the inventories. So that's already, again, in implementation per stages. It's a little bit different because they are doing per different stages of types of chemicals, whether they are mixtures, whether they are products, whether they are industrial or they are non-industrial. And they are currently also developing their regulation on prioritization and risk assessment. And in the case of Peru, they have a decree that has the level of a law that establishes a lot of different elements referring to chemical management, among them GHS and registration, risk assessment, and those type of elements. And they are drafting this secondary regulation that will be a decree again, that will detail all the operative aspects. So they are not in the implementation yet, but they have the framework approved. So in a point, they are in a very similar situation to Brazil, I would say.
Okay, and what is the current situation, let's say, in Costa Rica with their chemicals management scheme?
Costa Rica it was one of the first members of OECD, so they also have this need to comply with the OECD requirements related to chemical management. They do have a registry already, but it has a different approach to what we are now hearing in the rest of the countries, because it's driven through products, through a product approach and through GHS. So actually what you are registering is the GHS classification, labeling, and SDS. Now they are going through a review process within the OECD, so they have to put together the missing elements. And they have been working in a new regulation for prioritization again and for risk assessment. In the last conversations I had with them, they are rethinking a little bit the approach, because they went to one of the large events and they heard what it was supposed to be, and they realized that they were giving like kind of a different approach. So they're working in that adaptation. But again, they are facing difficulties because as being a developing countries, the lack of resources is really very difficult. So they have applied for some funds to help them finalize this process. But we should hear from them soon. Hopefully it's something that has been adapted from the previous version.
Okay, I also learned that Honduras was working on a chemical management regulation. Any updates there? And are there other countries we should keep an eye on?
So Honduras is working in a set of elements. They are working on a waste management regulation. They are working again in a chemical management regulation, industrial chemicals, I mean. This is what they are seeing, the way they are seeing it is this is like an initial step. These are the first conversations that they are having within the government to put this together, but they have actually achieved a very interesting level of regulation. So I think that it's the result of a project that they have done with the UNDP, and the final elements that they have are that they are. So now it's a political matter. Whether this will fly or not will depend on the political agenda. But they do have the element, I would say. And well, also we have El Salvador, which is the latest country in the region to adopt GHS, the 6th revision. This was done last couple of weeks. So I'm aware that they are also working in other types of regulations that are also needed. And well, going a little bit beyond Latin America, I would say the Caribbean is also a region that we have to look upon, because they are moving forward also on GHS adoption, industrial chemical regulations. So yes, I would say that things are coming on.
Okay, you already mentioned GHS implementation across the Caribbean and Latin America. Can you sketch a little bit where each country is in the GHS implementation?
So the last one is El Salvador, as I said. Then I would say Brazil. It's currently in the implementation of the 7th edition, so they are the most updated country that's starting in July this year. The implementation of the new edition. They used to have the 5th edition for many years. We have as well GHS implemented in Colombia. We have it in Chile, in Argentina, in Uruguay, in Ecuador, in El Salvador, in Mexico, and I think I'm covering almost all of them, but stay at my presentation tomorrow and I will detail that. But what we've seen so far is that there is a huge movement towards implementing GHS for workplace. The only country that has GHS for consumer products is Chile so far, and the Comunidad Andina has GHS for pesticides. So there is also Peru already implementing GHS in pesticides. So that I would say is the picture of the region in terms of GHS.
Okay, thank you. Thaianne, like Capoeira, countries try balancing economic growth with environmental protection in their regulatory frameworks. Can you share your view on this?
Okay, like Capoeira.
Like Capoeira.
Like Capoeira, we are trying to do all the sustainable things together. If you are thinking about health and environment and industry regulations, but we work really well together. And like a global framework of chemicals, I love these streets. We have our CONASC, so we can put all them together and do our best for this. And we restabilize the REIQ. The REIQ is the special regime for chemical incentive. So when you talk about sustainable, we need to talk about this REIQ in Brazil, because it's when you give some tax incentive for the industry of chemicals, but in another hand, you approve the sustainable, the labor's law, everything. It's so good enough to give this financial incentive. So it's like a capoeira, but we work really good together in Brazil.
Okay. A Brazilian proverb is de grauwem em grauwem a galinha enche o pap, which means grain by grain the hen fills her belly, meaning small efforts are adding up to significant results over time. Can you tell us in a few words about Brazil's ambitious ecological transformation plan and how the chemical industry fits in that?
Perfect. This is a new plan, but it's not putting new things inside. But an important thing you have to know is the Minister of Finance started this plan. It's great because it's not environment starting. So we work really in a good relationships with the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Industry, but they has the plan, and we are talking about the circular economy. We are talking about the energy transition. So we put all this together, and it was special for the chemical safety. That's the thinking in the small words. We need to know it's Minister of Finance do this, so it's perfect for us.
It sounds perfect. What do you think will be some of the big developments in the sustainability agenda as we move forward toward COP30, that's organized by Brazil in Amazon this fall?
Yes, it will be we are very excited for this event. Before of this, we will have next week the UN CCAC, is the Coalition of Climate and Air Climate in Brazil as well, and we will work hard for this, the air pollution and the climate. It will be a big event, and we will have the COP in Brazil. We're really excited to show our plan, our climate plan, and to show how works government and the industries, and in the show to all world the Amazon forest, and it will be really nice.
No. Good luck with the organization of that.
Thank you.
Final question. What future trends do you foresee in the regulatory landscape for chemicals and sustainability in Latin America?
Okay, we have so many challenges to fit of when we are talking about chemicals. We have many threats like the Stockholm Convention, Rotterdam Convention, Mercury, the Minamata Convention, and we have now the law of chemicals, and I think we will work hard in the system. Like Alejandra said, we will do many regulatory cooperations to do the best system we can do for the industry. But after this, we need to do a good system for our government to implement the law. We are talking about the technical committee, we are talking about the deliberative committee, so we need to put all these committees together with a good system to industry, but also to the government, and we need to do this all fast, because like Alejandra said, Brazil, it will be the first one in the Latin America to have the law, but things change, and we don't know if the things will change again, so we are doing all the best. We have a nice team, a perfect team, I said, because we are now in our director, so who are doing the legislation, it's a public servants. So we work with this a long time, we study this a long time, so we are doing all the best for a public service like that. And that's why we are working hard, and I think in 2 years to have all these regulations good.
Okay, perfect. Alejandra, what do you foresee as trends?
So, well, definitely we will have the implementation of these instruments. we are currently in the very first step, which is actually, creating this inventory, but that's not actually the most challenging aspect of these legislations. It's actually to actually know what are the risks of these chemicals. So I think we are facing that stage in the sense of identifying the mechanism to prioritize them, but also the challenge of defining the methodology for assessing those chemicals, and the challenge of deciding the measures for managing those risks. So that itself is going to be huge, I believe, in the region. And there is a huge opportunity as well for coordination among countries. Some countries will ask the companies to provide the risk assessments. Others will develop them themselves. Some countries will ask companies to work together and assess a chemical, like one chemical, one assessment, similar to an EU approach. Others will give liberty for the companies to have the approach they prefer. So all of these will be huge, will be big, and will have a huge impact in the region, I believe. Something else that will happen is there will be a time in which the PRTRs will begin to be implemented as well. It's also an OECD requirement, and right now I would say that only Chile has a good PRTR in place working. Chile has advanced in the regulation. Peru has some efforts done in the past, but still it's a huge pending in the region. So PRTR will be the next big thing in terms of chemical regulations. And as Thaianne said, all the impacts of treaties and conventions. What will happen once the GFC is more operationalized? What will happen with the plastics treaty? What will happen with the conventions, PFAS approach? We will hear about that a lot. So chemicals is a subject that is completely in the agenda right now. So we shall expect a lot of new changes, upcoming changes, and new regulations in the region. We haven't stopped in Latin America.
Okay, please continue. Thaianne and Alejandra, thank you very much for your input. Great to see that authority and industry inspire and energize the crowd. It shows again that regulatory life can be a carnival, so enjoy that ride, even if it sometimes feels like a roller coaster ride.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.